Hello everyone, welcome back to the course Introduction to Infrastructure Asset Management. This course is offered under MOOCs, an initiative of Government of India. In the last lecture, we saw that infrastructure asset management decision making revolves around three key goals: performance, sustainability and resilience. In this lecture, we will discuss about sustainability. We will discuss what are the different sustainability considerations in infrastructure management. This is the second lecture within week 6. My name is Chirag Kothari and I am an assistant professor in the Department of Civil Engineering at IIT Kanpur. Let's dive deeper and start discussion on what is sustainability. Sustainability is a widely used term. However, different people perceive it differently. Let us have a look at some of the different definitions of sustainability. Sustainability, I am sure all of you have come across this definition, which was given by United Nations in 1987, where sustainability was defined as meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Then later on, the definition was expanded to communicate that sustainable infrastructure systems are those that are planned, designed, constructed, operated and decommissioned in a manner that ensures economic, financial, social, environmental, including climate resilience and institutional sustainability over the entire infrastructure's life cycle. Please have a look at the different terms mentioned here. It is said that the different phases of an infrastructure system like planning, design, construction, operation and demolition should be done in a manner such that we have economic sustainability, financial sustainability, social sustainability and environmental sustainability. In some of the definitions, sustainable infrastructure management also includes climate resilience, but in the context of this class, we are discussing resilience as a separate parameter along with performance and sustainability. Moreover, it is said that institutional sustainability is another important aspect which is part of sustainable infrastructure development. Moving on, there is another definition which says sustainability implies development is ecologically sound, socially just and economically viable, and they continue to do so for future generations. So, I hope you get the idea that a lot of these definitions are revolving around concepts of ecologically sound, socially just, which is the equity aspect, economically viable, which is economics, and we are saying that all the development should take place in such a manner that we are not compromising on the needs of future generations. Moving on, there is another important definition which was given by Asian Development Bank in 2009. It says that the basic principles underlying sustainable infrastructure include: number 1, promoting low carbon development and minimizing impacts on local environment; B, advancing solutions that help communities deal with unavoidable impacts of climate change; C, improving the access of poor people to education, health and basic social protections as well as to markets and productive assets; D, emphasis on gender equality and the empowerment of women; E, improving the transparency and efficiency of public resource management, that is control on wasteful spending and corruption. So, if you again see some of the keywords here, you will notice that the first one is around environment, low carbon development and minimizing local impacts. Second one is around some aspects of resilience, which is to avoid unavoidable impacts of climate change. The third one is around equity, where you want to ensure that the infrastructure provides access to poor people, education, health, as well as it provides social protection and access to different markets. Fourth one is again around equity, emphasizing gender equality, and the last one is around having a transparent and efficient system to ensure that the wasteful spending is reduced. So, all in all, we see that there are different definitions of sustainability. These have evolved over time. However, all of them revolve around a common thread. This can be explained with the help of a triple bottom line approach. This is a common way in which sustainability goals are defined. Sustainability using the triple bottom line approach says that sustainability goals encompasses three key things: social, economic and environmental goals. The New Climate Economic Report of 2016 defines sustainable infrastructure based on three criteria: economical goals, environmental goals and equity goals. For an infrastructure to be sustainable, it must be economically sustainable, environmentally sustainable and equitably sustainable. Let us discuss these three aspects one by one. First, economic sustainability. Economic sustainability refers to the process where the infrastructure development should not burden governments with unpayable debts. At the same time, it should not impose painfully high cost on the users. Moreover, the development should be such that it helps in overall economic growth. So, economic sustainability revolves around the aspect of money. We want to ensure that the development is such that it does not burden the government, at the same time it does not burden the users. Also, it should help in the overall economic development of the society. Moving on, environmental sustainability refers to the idea that economic development should take place in such a manner that it limits environmental damage, it limits pollution and emissions at all stages of the project and also conserves natural resources. So, within environmental sustainability, the focus is on reducing damage to the environment. Moving on, the third important pillar of sustainability is equity. Socially sustainable infrastructure means that it is inclusive, that is, it serves everyone, not just a select few, and it contributes to enhanced livelihood and social well-being of everyone. So, any infrastructure which is said to be sustainable should be economically sustainable, environmentally sustainable and socially sustainable. Socially sustainable is same as having equity goals. I hope now we have a clear understanding of what is sustainability. It is not just constrained to environmental sustainability. It includes other aspects of economics as well as equity. Now, having discussed the idea of sustainability, let us discuss why are we concerned about it. Why do we need to account for sustainability in infrastructure decision making? The question is, why are we concerned? It is important to note that in 1900, the world population was around 150 crores. Now, it has gone to 800 crores. It is expected that the population of the world will be around 1000 crore by 2050. If you see here, population has been exponentially rising. As population increases, we need more and more infrastructure. Increase in population leads to urbanization and economic activities. Any urbanization consumes resources. More and more natural resources are getting consumed. Now, high use of natural resources leads to issues such as greenhouse gas emissions, waste generation, pollution and so on. Moreover, infrastructure development at a rapid pace also leads to climate extremes, biodiversity loss and health impacts. Hence, it is clear that economic growth rides on resource use, but at what cost? It impacts our climate, our health, our biodiversity and overall our planet. Construction industry is found to be a major source of resource consumption. It is clear from this graph that construction is a major contributor to resource consumption. construction drives resource use, and it is important that construction plays a key role in driving sustainability. Infrastructure development is critical for the economic development of a society. However, we have seen that it comes at some cost. Construction has several impacts on the environment. It is found that construction activities consume around 100 billion tons of non-renewable resources per year. Moreover, out of the total greenhouse gas emissions, 60% of them can be accounted for due to construction. Similarly, out of the total biodiversity loss, 80% of it is due to infrastructure development. Moreover, 60 to 70% of C&D waste, which is construction and demolition waste, which gets generated, ends in landfills, which again impacts the environment. Overall, construction activities impact health, impact resilience, and also the environment. Thus, it is important that developing countries which are focusing on meeting their development needs adopt a more sustainable approach. This is increasingly important because of the growing threat of climate change. We need to ensure that the development today does not negatively impact future generations. Governments and organizations all over the world have taken several steps to promote sustainability goals. Let us talk about different sustainability efforts in the last 50 years. In 1972, UN conducted the first conference on human environment. This was the first major international environmental summit. At that time, sustainability goals were centered around environment. Then in 1987 came this definition where it was discussed that it is important to meet the needs of present generation without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their need. Then in 1992, during the Rio Summit, the Global Agenda 21 for Sustainable Development was introduced. This is the time when the thought process moved from purely environmental goals to further include economic and equity goals. Then in 1997, the Kyoto Protocol came where binding international agreements were signed to reduce greenhouse gases emissions. Later in 2000, Millennium Development Goals were developed. 8 goals around hunger, poverty, discrimination and environmental degradation were discussed, deliberated and adopted. More recently, in 2015, UN came up with Sustainable Development Goals. Agenda 2030 was discussed. This included 17 goals covering broader socio, economic and environmental issues. And at the same time, Paris Agreement was signed. Here, it was discussed that globally, we want to limit the overall global warming to 2 degrees Celsius of the pre-industrial level. So, we see that there have been several sustainability efforts which have been undertaken in the last 50 years. It is important that the construction sector and its activities also align with the global sustainability call. The current development around sustainability revolves around the 17 UN SDG goals. Let us talk about them briefly. In 2015, UN came up with 17 Sustainable Development Goals. These were around 5 P's. First was people, second was planet, third was prosperity, fourth was peace, and fifth is partnership. So, these 17 goals were defined within the realm of 5 P's. If you see here, there were different sustainable development goals like no poverty, zero hunger, quality education, and so on. Some of these are directly linked with the construction industry. For example, Sustainable Development Goal number 12, which deals with responsible consumption and production. As we have seen, construction industry widely consumes natural resources. So, responsible consumption is an important aspect. Climate action is another important aspect. Moreover, infrastructure innovation and infrastructure, goal number 9, is also linked with infrastructure management. Goal 11, which is around sustainable cities and communities, is also linked with infrastructure management, and so on. So we see that construction industry as well as infrastructure development has a key role in ensuring the UN SDG goals are met. In line with the global efforts, India has also fully accepted and committed to meeting sustainability goals. India's commitment to sustainability include adoption of 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. India has integrated all the 17 SDG goals into national development planning. Niti Aayog has been assigned to coordinate implementation of these goals. Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation has developed national indicators to promote sustainable development goals. Further, India promoted SDG acceleration as part of the 2023 G20 New Delhi Leaders Declaration. Further, at COP26 in 2021, India committed to be a net zero emissions nation by 2070, and it also introduced its Panchamrit Climate Action Plan. So we see that India has a strong commitment to the overall sustainability goals. Sustainability goals around infrastructure development and management involves two key aspects. The first aspect is designing for sustainability, and the second aspect is sustainable management of assets. In the first aspect, we focus on creating infrastructure which is sustainable. You want to come up with practices, technologies and projects which are economically sustainable, environmentally sustainable and socially sustainable. On the other hand, when it comes to management of assets, you need to adopt processes, systems and frameworks which are sustainable. In the context of this course, the focus is on infrastructure asset management. We will focus on the second aspect, that is how to integrate sustainability in infrastructure asset management. Let us discuss what is sustainability in infrastructure asset management. We already saw that countries need to spend heavily on operation and maintenance of infrastructure assets. Increasing urbanization, growing population and rising needs have put excessive pressure on the existing infrastructure, resulting in faster deterioration. Similar to new construction, maintenance also requires extensive resource use, thus necessitating sustainable asset management practices. Sustainability refers to managing and maintaining infrastructure assets in a way that meets current service requirements while ensuring minimal negative environmental impact and enhanced social benefits. Sustainability management, as we discussed in the last lecture, revolves around optimizing assets performance while protecting the environment and ensuring social benefits. This is done by setting up different measures of sustainability, monitoring and evaluating against these targets, and finally making informed interventions. Now, in this particular lecture, we will take a case example where we will discuss how different aspects of sustainability can be integrated into asset maintenance of highways. Sustainability in practice. Case example of highways. This is a small example which will help us in understanding how asset maintenance of roads can be done in a sustainable manner. Let us discuss a case example of highway asset management. As we have seen, any sustainable asset maintenance will include three aspects: economics, environment and equity. In the context of roads or highways, what are some of the economic considerations? The first and the major economic consideration is you want to keep the overall budget in check. That is, you want to keep a check on the overall expenditure. This means reducing the overall life cycle cost of constructing, maintaining and demolishing an infrastructure. Overall life cycle costs include two key aspects, the agency cost and the road user cost. Now, when it comes to agency cost, it includes the direct cost of maintaining an highway asset. For example, you construct a highway, say in year 0, and you put X amount of money. Now, to maintain this road in a good condition, one needs to do maintenance, say every 5 years. So, this is the maintenance cost. The goal is to focus on reducing the overall maintenance cost. In addition to the direct costs, there are associated indirect costs. For example, the cost which is spent in data collection, the cost which is spent on condition monitoring of roads, the cost which is spent on workforce and labor which monitor the condition of different roads, different administrative costs, and so on. Further, another aspect of agency cost is loss in revenue. Say you decide to maintain a particular road at the end of 5 years. The maintenance will take 3 months. During these 3 months, it is likely that the traffic which flows through that road is either completely stopped or it is reduced. Any reduction in traffic leads to loss in revenue. So, when it comes to agency cost, these are some of the considerations in highway asset management. You might have different strategies. You might say, I will spend lot more in the year 0 to choose a construction strategy in such a manner that the maintenance is only needed every 10 years. That way, you are saying you are spending more today, but subsequently for maintaining that asset, you will be spending less. Alternatively, you might say, today I want to spend less and I will continuously maintain it every 5 years. All this decision making revolves around the economic sustainability drives this decision making. Choosing one option over another is a function of how much money is available, what are the different assets under consideration, and what are the requirements of each of these assets. In addition to agency cost, the government also looks at reducing the road user cost. Road user costs are those costs which are directly borne by the user. The first one is travel delay cost. Say we decide to maintain a particular road section. Now, if the traffic is stopped on that road, then the users might have to take a detour. Taking a detour might cause delays. So, there is a travel delay cost associated with any maintenance activity. Even if there is reduced speed on a given road section due to work zone, again there can be different travel delays. Moreover, if there is no maintenance on a given road and its roughness goes high, then we will have a higher vehicle operating cost. Again, we want to reduce these costs. If a particular road is not maintained properly, there can be safety concerns which can increase the crash costs. Again, one would like to reduce these costs. Overall, we have seen that economic considerations are revolving around the budget available as well as the agency cost and the road user cost. In addition to these, there are some other economic considerations such as the travel time savings. How much time gets saved if a road is maintained properly, or if there is a road section which is of high national importance. Say it has a direct impact on the GDP or safety, health, and so on. All these again relate with different economic goals. If there is a road section which is of high national importance, then it is given a priority over some of the other road sections. Hence, it is clear that there are different economic goals when it comes to highway asset maintenance. These indicators or goals are translated to different objective functions. For example, one of them could be to reduce agency cost. So, minimize agency cost can be one of the objectives. Second objective could be to minimize road user costs. Also, you can have a constraint which says that the total cost which is spent in a given year should be less than or equal to the budget available. So, I hope this idea is clear that these goals translate to different objective functions and constraints for our decision making problem or the optimization problem. Now, in addition to economics, there are other considerations of environment and equity. Let us discuss some of the different environmental goals. Environmental goals revolve around the following. The primary focus is on reducing the overall greenhouse gas emissions due to two aspects. First one is the construction material which will be used. So, for example, asphalt which is being used for construction of road, and second is the emissions due to the construction activity and equipments which are used to maintain this particular road. Moreover, there are considerations of increased emissions from vehicle due to poor road conditions. Say there is a road section which has higher roughness, then it is likely that there will be longer travel times and increased emissions from the vehicle. Moreover, there can be increased fuel consumptions in work zone areas. If you are doing a maintenance of a given road section, it is likely that work zone congestion leads to increased period of acceleration, deacceleration and idling, thus resulting in higher GHG emissions. So, when maintaining an infrastructure, the different environmental considerations include the ones due to the direct material consumption, second due to the equipments which will be used for construction activity, the third one is around what are the impacts of not maintaining the road on time, and lastly it depends on the work zone area. If the maintenance will take a lot of time, then the congestion will be there for a lot of time, which will lead to increased fuel consumption. On the other hand, if there is a lighter maintenance activity which can be completed quickly, then the work zone congestion can be reduced to a few days or a few weeks. Thus, we can reduce some of the increased fuel consumption due to work zone areas. In addition to greenhouse gas emissions, there are other considerations which are equally important. This includes air, water and quality of land. You do not want to perform maintenance activities which destroy air, water or land. Also, you want to protect habitat and biodiversity. Say there is a road section which is surrounded by green belts, where you want to restrict the number of times a maintenance activity is done, because you understand that frequent maintenance activities in a green belt might impact the biodiversity which lives in that area. Next, we have the aspect of renewable energy use. You want to reduce the overall resource consumption and you want to promote renewable energy sources like solar, wind, etc. So, these are some of the environmental goals. Coming back to the optimization problem, environmental goals can be written as minimize total greenhouse gas emissions throughout the life of an asset. These again would include all the aspects which we have discussed here, including the materials which are used, the equipments which are used, the vehicles which drive on them and the fuel which gets consumed. Then there can be other considerations on minimize destruction to the habitat and so on. Now, beyond economics and environmental goals, there are some social equity considerations. Let us talk about them in the context of road highway asset management. Equity decisions relate to safety of members in a community. If there is a road section which is unsafe for use, then it is likely that the community members are at risk. Especially if it's a vulnerable community, then their exposure to this risk is further increased. Thus, it is important to ensure safety of the members by doing maintenance at the right time. Next, the community members might be exposed to high levels of air pollution. Again, doing asset maintenance at the right time can potentially improve air pollution levels. There can be considerations of noise levels in a society. You might want to plan your highway asset maintenance in such a manner that the noise levels are reduced. Moreover, a good quality road will have business appeal. Also, it will have economic attractiveness for the community. We have seen that a good quality road often leads to economic development in a region, which directly relates to social equity. Thus, it is important that in addition to economics and environmental goals, equity goals are also accounted for in the decision making. Other equity considerations include affordability. Affordability means that you want to ensure that the cost of travel is minimum, especially for communities where the income levels are low. Further, roads play an important role in ensuring accessibility to different markets and regions. This is another important equity consideration. Lastly, you want to ensure cultural and heritage protection. All these are different equity goals which needs to be taken care during highway asset management. Thus, a decision maker responsible for management of highway assets needs to account for economic goals, environmental goals, and equity goals. However, it is not that easy, especially because there are constrained budgets. We don't have enough money to take care of all the goals at the same time. Moreover, some of these goals are often conflicting in nature. That is, if you try to do a project to improve economic goals, it might come at cost of environmental goals. That is, there are some trade-offs in economic, environmental and social equity goals. Let us discuss one such example. Say you have two options. One is to perform high cost intensive M&R activity. If you do a high cost intensive M&R activity, it can lead to significant improvement in the individual payments condition. However, this will be at the cost of increased greenhouse gas emissions due to construction and traffic disruption. So, we see that more cost is employed, which significantly improves the payments condition, which is a plus. But this is happening at the cost of increased emissions and increased traffic disruptions. Moreover, in a budget constrained scenario, since the budget is limited, doing high cost intensive M&R activities can lead to a limited number of sections getting treatment. Thus, resources are inequitably distributed. So, it has a negative impact on the equity aspect. On the other hand, conversely, if we choose less intensive M&R activities, then there will be lower traffic interruptions. Also, there will be a marginal reduction in greenhouse gas emissions due to construction. Further, under budget constraints, we could actually fund more projects. So, the likelihood of equitable distributions is possible. However, if we do less intensive M&R activities, the overall improvements in the road condition will be low. There is a likelihood that the user cost will increase. There can be chances of increased travel delay costs, the vehicle operating cost, as well as the crash cost getting increased due to poor network conditions. Moreover, less intensive M&R activity might mean that our infrastructure in this case a road, needs to be maintained again and again, which means the disruptions due to work zone will again increase. So, we see that some of these economic, environment and social equity goals are actually conflicting in nature. Moreover, under a constrained budget, it becomes difficult to account for all these goals concurrently. Thus, a decision maker, when planning for sustainable highway asset maintenance, needs to account for environment, economics and equity. Under a budget constraint scenario, managing all these three aspects is difficult, more so because some of these goals are conflicting in nature. Thus, to summarize, we see that decision makers need to account for sustainability when developing asset management plans. This is a challenging task as it involves several conflicting objectives. It is important to come up with a framework which concurrently focuses on all the three objectives while taking M&R decisions. Nonetheless, it is a key consideration and we should definitely account for sustainability in infrastructure management decision making. Multi-criteria approaches and multi-criteria optimization has been found suitable for taking such M&R decisions. However, some of these methods rely on relevant experts to provide appropriate weights. I hope the discussion we had around AHP is clear. For example, we saw that in AHP, when prioritizing different criteria, one needs to rely on experts' judgment, which brings some level of subjectivity, but still one needs to do that to come up with a more systematic approach for doing multi-criteria decision making. With that, I want to end this discussion here, where we have discussed different aspects of sustainability considerations in infrastructure asset management decision making. Here are some of the references and suggested readings which will help you understand the concept of sustainability in detail. Thank you. Thanks for listening.